These are the Minecraft facts that sound fake, but they're entirely real. Starting with a game as open-ended as Minecraft, plenty of sneaky details are bound to pass some players by. And this one with wet sponges is definitely a common surprise. And I swear, every time I see a post about this, plenty of comments are shocked to find it out. So today, let's do something of a public service announcement and cover this for good. You see, if you put a wet sponge into a furnace and then smelt it using a lava bucket as fuel, you can get the water back in the bucket when it's done, which is a neat little Easter egg for sure. And now at least we all know it's there. Trapdoors, despite being made out of wood, cannot be caught on fire. And you'll see as much when we place a lava source block in the middle here. Because in this setup, there's no air for the fire to spread to, so the trapdoors stay safe. Even though this whole setup looks a little bit precarious, so I still wouldn't recommend getting too close to the lava. Even if the trapdoors can't catch on fire, you certainly could. If you get a stray underwater, they'll no longer shoot you, which sounds cool, but you'll still want to stay away, since instead, they'll use melee attacks that'll inflict you with slowness. And honestly, that makes sense. Arrows do not go very far in the water anyway, so I'd get why they want to put them aside and instead just attack you like this. So the phantoms will spawn regardless of biome and other spawning rules, which means that they're the only hostile mob that can spawn inside of the mushroom fields biome. And funnily enough, they can even spawn down in the void. Spiders and cave spiders are neutral mobs, and they aren't neutral based off daytime, but off light level. So light level of 12 or more makes them neutral, but 11 or less makes them hostile. I had no idea. I guess I haven't torched up the caves enough. I genuinely thought that there was no amount that they would be fine with me, but sure enough. Oh, as soon as it's stepping out into the light level that's lower, it gets angry at me. About a month after the piglins, the Nether update brought us the Strider, which even though it's not intentional, if you were to take commands to add a saddle to a baby Strider and then ride it, it does work. But you will take fire damage while going over lava. It's not high enough to keep you off the ground. How did we make these minecarts fly? Well, the reason's bees. Because if you summon in a minecart riding as a passenger on top of a bee, it'll actually still let the minecarts fly around and they'll still be functional. And then if we take after this user and make the bees invisible, we have quite the mini game to climb up to the top of the base. Just make sure you don't hit the sneak key, otherwise you'll be in a spot way worse than last place. Before wool was actually added as a block, the sheep would drop cloth, which was just the original name for the wool block, as well as mushrooms. I guess they take that from the pig. And stranger still is that cloth actually used to be able to craft into cloth armor, but that was eventually replaced with the leather armor that we would get from our cows. If you've ever pieced together a chicken farm, then you know that these mobs can lay a ton of eggs, and normally we're left cleaning up that overflow. And while that's true, it's apparently not a universal fact, since this chicken right here is incapable of laying any eggs across its lifetime. And what makes this one so special? Well, the reason is that chickens spawned from a baby zombie jockey are coded to not lay eggs ever. And this is likely to prevent any kind of zombie from picking up that egg item and never despawning. Usually, when you see a skeleton, your first instinct is for fight or flight. But if you stop and look them over, you'll see this. In Java Edition, 89% of skeletons are right-handed, and the remaining 11% hold a bow in their left. And this emulates the estimated right-handed to left-handed percentage in the real world. And thankfully, there aren't any ambidextrous skeletons in the game. Looting desert temples is a fun pastime for sure, but what if you're trying to get the valuables without wasting your precious time? Well, that's where this method comes in. See, while most of us would just spend the seconds to individually loot each and every one of these chests, this user's method is a lot more straightforward. And instead, we use the TNT from the trap below to blow up the chamber and the chest with it. And while that sounds dangerous, it's worth noting that by standing in the pit down here, it'll let us survive with barely a scratch sustained. And afterwards, we'll not only have all that treasure in our inventory, but a ton of blocks to build our way out as well. During Minecraft Classic, we saw the implementation of the skeleton, but what we saw back then was definitely different from what we see today. Originally, they didn't carry bows, but don't think that means you were safe from any arrows. Consider that also in the survival test, they would shoot off these special skeleton arrows, shooting 6 different arrows at a short range in different directions. And while they were eventually given their bows in Java Edition Alpha, they didn't know how to hold them the right way. And we wouldn't see the modern interpretation until Java Edition Beta 1.8. Textures in the game are fairly simplistic, to say the least, which sometimes means it's hard to make out what's what, like the hearts you see while riding a horse. For the longest time, I never understood the texture, but thanks to user LittleDominator64 on Reddit, a closer look actually shows their saddles, which I'll admit zoomed out is still pretty hard to see. But once you put them side by side, the picture clears up, especially if you recognize the pixels of the metal bit of the spur. Now, I won't claim it's a great texture, but hey, now I know what it's supposed to be, and maybe you do too. Amongst Minecraft parkour, there's been few things as famous as the fabled 5-block jump. I mean, at this point, if you see a pattern like this and someone jumping in the thumbnail, you can pretty much guarantee they're gonna talk about it. But the real truth is that it actually is possible to jump 5 blocks. You'll just need a very specific setup. And after building up enough momentum, if you time it just right and jump at the last pixel of the block, you could learn how to rocket yourself over to the other side, which I don't think you're gonna find practical if you want to use this jump over ravines in the real game, but to do it once and said that you did the impossible, I think that's plenty worth doing. The Lily of the Valley has the exact same texture no matter which angle you view it from, which makes for a really weird optical illusion when you start to walk around the lily. And as this video points out, it even still works like that if you stand above it and move around in a circle, which is more than a little weird, and honestly it starts to hurt my head. Although chests aren't currently a full block, in the old versions, they sure behaved like them. And that'd be why we were able to place things like torches, rails, and even ladders on top of our chests. And while I understand why some of this got patched out, it is unfortunate that we can't run our redstone machinery over top of these. That might have made for some cool compact designs. And while you can pull these off nowadays by using update suppression, let's be honest, that just isn't the same. On February 13th of 2019, foxes enter the mix. And in case it isn't obvious, foxes aren't players. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's actually a reference to this bug, where the sounds from foxes would be labeled as player sound effects in the subtitles. And that's also the reason why we got this splash screen. So if you were to feed a hoglin the crimson fungus, usually this would despawn because it's a hostile mob. It should despawn if we go far enough away. But now it actually has some bit of NBT data changed in it, where it's not a regular zoglin. They gain the persistence required tag, and it doesn't despawn. So you're welcome. Sorry about your face. When you toggle a piston between on and off rapidly with a gravity affected block such as sand on top of it, then eventually the piston will actually break the block. Which, there you go, can even be picked up as an item. Is it practical? Not exactly. You're way better using a slab or something. And did you know there used to be a bug where our saddles would disappear on mules when they were invisible? Meaning we could have a fully out of sight steed to ride into battle, which is a lot cooler than the other horses that we weren't allowed to see. Exploring the new caves that generated in 1.18 is a real treat. But while they're fun to explore, exploring them safely is a different story. So to make it to the base of that ravine with both your legs intact, weaving vines are the best answer. See, with these, we can hang one off of the roof and then bone meal it to reach the bottom. And that not only gives us a way to reach the base of the cave safely, but it also offers easy access back to the top. And that kind of dual purpose can be a real lifesaver. In 2017, we got parrots added in Minecraft. And when they first came to the game, if you played any music next to them in a jukebox, they would cycle through all of their different variants, based off this classic rainbow dancing parrot emo. And while they haven't gotten a lot of love since, strangely enough, you can't actually tame parrots by using sniffer plant seeds. Yeah, both the torch flower seeds and the pitcher pods work for this. Though those are such a pain to farm that you're probably just better off using regular wheat seeds. I'm sure at some point we've all heard the classic saying that cats always land on their feet, and in Minecraft, that's a fact. But even though these felines don't suffer any fall damage when they drop, they still try to avoid the fall just the same, which I think is fair. I mean, I don't take any fall damage using a water bucket, but that doesn't exactly mean I want to do it all the time. And I think if cats were coded to fall whenever they want, we'd have some plenty weird sights. And I, for one, don't want the ravine next to a village turning into a litter box. Alright, so if we were to get a baby chicken, one of these smallest mobs hitbox-wise, it might not look like it with its head, but actually, because its hitbox is so small, it is completely invulnerable inside of this minecart. There is no way for us to hit it without hitting the minecart instead. So if I were to punch it, it's always going to punch the minecart instead of the chicken. Even if I got something like a bow and arrow, swing, no luck. Without breaking any blocks, how would you get out of this hole? Well, silly as it seems, a door is actually the solution, and maybe the best one. Since if you place down a door and then flip it back and forth, you'll be able to hop up the steps of the door and go up 2 blocks at a time, which can be exceptionally useful for helping you get out of a hole or an animal pen. And that way, any of the other mobs that are trapped in there with you, they won't be able to hop up the blocks while you're pillaring out to escape. With so many blocks to choose from, Minecraft is bound to have a few repeats. And while it's to be expected, it makes it all the more impressive when Mojang hides those variants. Take the jungle log for instance. As such, it doesn't look too much like the standard oak selection, but if we flip our oak log to its side, then it's a bit more jarring. See, what's happening here is that the jungle log is actually a color shift of the sideways oak texture, even having the same details when you overlap them, which I'll admit is pretty cool since I always thought their similarities stopped and started with the planks texture. But even if they do match, that color combination is still hideous. Back in the beta versions of Minecraft, there used to be a second kind of enderman, and not just with the green eyes that they originally had, but rather it was possible to find an enderman who was completely white. And the reason that this happened is that in older versions, if an enderman spawned around the lowest Y levels in the world, then the void fog that generated down there messed up textures. And so when the Minecraft code tries to correct this, it messes up so that the white color is completely permanent, giving us an albino enderman. Something tells me getting a white grass block from a white enderman, that'd be something entirely special. This anvil will never hurt me, because even though you do take a lot of damage from a fallen anvil, if an anvil were to pass you by, you don't take any damage, which gives for the ridiculous sight that you see in this example. Here we are in survival mode, and no damage is taken from the anvil, which I guess makes sense. It's still treated like a falling sand entity when it's moving this way, but something about seeing 31 ingots of iron just passes by unscathed, I think it's a sight worth trying for yourself. This miniature build looks like it's modded, but it's entirely vanilla. And the reason for that is that we're able to use the block display command to make tiny versions of blocks that we can then use to build. And even cooler, there's a plugin that exists that allows you to take your builds and then make them into miniatures simply. Because otherwise having to go in and type in the relative positions of all these inside of a command block just sounds way less fun than actual building. And partnering this with the ability to change your scale in recent updates, I think that's all the resources we need to make a very fun Minecraft map. Clearly, in a game called Minecraft, you're gonna have a bunch of crafting recipes, which makes it all the weirder when some of them get removed in later updates. Take horse armor for example. When initially added back in the snapshot 13W16A, they had crafting recipes like so, but just 24 days later, they were removed. So I guess we'll have to stick to fortress chests to get our supply. If you've ever built a snow golem in Minecraft, you might have Amazon to thank for their inclusion. Let me explain. In this tweet back in September of 2011, Notch explained that because of problems with the Amazon Web Services, or AWS, he got frustrated enough to make the snow mob. And now you can buy snow golem merch on Amazon, so I guess it comes full circle. This is the moon cow, one of the joke mobs that we only saw in the A or B voting update, which much like the player can wear a glass block on its head to look like an astronaut. Oh, and they also moonwalk. And what's interesting about this is that regular cows can't even have this look if you used commands. The add and replace command doesn't work the same way. But if you want to take them off the moon and return them back to Earth, then by feeding them up air, you can turn them into balloon cows and send them right back over to the Earth. The other special mob from this April Fool's update was ray tracing. It's just a guy named Ray who also has a French mode variant, which if you voted on it, you can make everything in the world French. And instead of his normal quips, he'll just say omelette de fromage. There's also a splash bottle of ray tracing, which if you throw it at any mob, disguises it into ray tracing, which all the other mobs go and attack. Bats don't tend to get a lot of attention. After all, they don't drop anything, so we mostly just leave them be. But if you keep getting annoyed by these flying rats, there might be a reason for that. You see, between October 20th and November 3rd, these mobs spawn more frequently as a reference to Halloween. And that's cute, but the bats are still pointless. What's so special about hanging roots in Minecraft? Well, most of the time, not much. But for a brief period during their development, there was something special about this item that no other item had. And no, it wasn't just the name hanging roots, but rather it was the fact that when the item was rendered on the ground, it would render substantially bigger compared to other items on the floor, which I've got to say makes it really funny to throw it out of your hand and see it basically grow like it's coming out of a Pokeball. And I've seen resource packs that do this to make treasure items bigger on the floor, but that's all secondhand. The idea of this actually happening in Minecraft for a time, that's pretty funny. And I like to think that Mojang didn't notice this in testing because, let's be honest, even they know the hanging roots are kind of a letdown. So the Go will automatically avoid powder snow. So look at that, we got powder snow here in the blocks. Will fall in, but it'll actually successfully pathfind over it. So we have this very specific spiral here, and it'll always avoid it. That's actually pretty cool for the mountain goat idea. If you aim just right, you could be able to hit yourself and actually get a surprising amount of momentum going, even moving yourself along faster than sprinting alone. And in a PvP situation, this could be able to help you get out of a pinch much faster, like double jumping over gorges. It's really cool. But in fairness, the amount of damage that you're taking from those few arrow shots is substantially less than you would have been taking from the bad guy right behind you, and also less than you would have taken from falling into that pit, so I feel like both of those are pretty good. On April Fool's of 2024, we got the potato update for Minecraft. In snapshot 24W14 potato, we also saw new mobs such as the potato. Functionally the same as a bat, it's just flat and it's also a potato. We also saw the poisonous potato zombie, which could occasionally spawn within the overworld. It's hostile towards other zombies, but weirdly enough doesn't attack villagers. Villagers don't even run from them. And while skeletons have been able to spawn at a lot of different light levels throughout the years, now needing an absolute light level of 0 to spawn in the overworld, they also used to burn due to the light level from torches. Back before it was set to only sunlight was able to burn them, torches gave off a bright enough light level that they could actually burn skeletons to death. First aquatic mob ever added to Minecraft is also up there for one of its most useless. But with squids lack in function, they more than make up for in knockback resistance. Ravagers and Java have 70% knockback resistance, but squids have up to 80, so you can't even get rid of them if you're trying hard enough. If you've been lucky enough to get your hands on a blue axolotl, you know these things are a tough find. I mean, with a 1 in 1200 chance of finding these water wolves, it's definitely gonna take some time. But there's a reason for that. You see, even though blue axolotls don't exist in real life, that 1 in 1200 number comes from the approximate number of axolotls that are still left in the wild today. If you've been in any fandom, you've definitely heard the word shipping come up before. And while that's its own can of worms, it seems like someone at LEGO agrees with you. Since in the July and August issue of LEGO Club magazine in 2016, it was officially mentioned that Steve is Alex's boyfriend, which is cute, but only until you make the two of them fight. The Ender Dragon holds a lot of importance to the Minecraft world, but while most of us spend hours just trying to find and kill the thing, have you ever bothered to learn its name? Because yeah, according to Notch and Dinnerbone, she is actually named Jean, with a question mark at the end and everything. everything. So if you're ready for that first name basis, then by all means. Unless we're talking about the secret killer rabbit, the bunnies in Minecraft are nothing to be afraid of. Though someone at Mojang disagrees. Because when Ravagers were tested in snapshot 18W43A, these pillager monsters were afraid of rabbits. Which is a fun Easter egg, but unfortunately, Jeb confirmed in a tweet that it was removed to maintain the beast's lore. On September 22nd of 2011, blazes were added to the game, and they used to attack creative players who would hit them. Cave spiders notably did the same, and it wouldn't be until a few updates later where this behavior was actually changed. Considering, what's the point? If you still don't have enough ender pearls by this point, then this is a speedrunner tactic that can be pretty helpful to game the system. What we're essentially doing here is setting up a soft reset button so that we can clean the board if we don't see the right mobs that we want to find. So to do that, we set up a pillar of 128 blocks or more, set our spawn at the top, and then jump down safely to the bottom. Then when you're down there, check what mobs spawn, hopefully an enderman, look at them, and then fight them off. Following that, it's just a simple death with dignity by lava, and then you can respawn right at the top to do the whole process over again. And by manipulating the way that the mobs unload and respawn, we can really get some sweet amount of resources with this. If you look at the original sprite file for the items.png that used to be in Minecraft, what you notice is quite a few items that were textured but never added to the game fully. And among those was the quiver, which had its origins in the Legend of the Chambered game that Notch had made prior. And more interestingly is that this wasn't just a forgotten thing, since on the 22nd of January in 2010, the texture was actually flipped to be a mirrored version. So they didn't forget about it, until of course they switched the way that Minecraft worked entirely with the resource pack update, and that meant we lost the quiver. That was until Dinnerbone tweeted out these two screenshots, one showing the quiver being used in survival, and another one showing it in the creative inventory. So it seemed like they even planned to add it in with the new tipped arrows. But again, after 1.9 fully came out, there was no mention of this anymore. But with inventory management being such a big problem for Minecraft, having a different way to hold extra arrows on hand without having to clog up your inventory, I think that's still worth exploring. And since we could put chest boats as a passenger inside of a minecart, that means that us and our new friends can tackle both the high seas and the high speeds of a roller coaster. But that's only scratching the surface for how useful these chest boats can be. Now, in 1.19, don't build your super smelter like this, but instead do it like this. Since one chest boat positioned like so can fill 9 hoppers simultaneously, we can make an extremely efficient furnace array for pretty cheap. And for an added bonus, use blast furnaces instead of the regular furnace. And the end result will be 18 times faster than what we're used to. I'm gonna come out and say it, I don't like baby piglins. I know, that might sound harsh, but honestly, these things are good for nothing except stealing my gold. But unfortunately for us, that situation isn't bound to change, since, as coded, baby piglins will never become adults, meaning we're stuck with a couple of bratty kids running around and ruining our commerce. And honestly, if I wasn't trying to stay on the parents' good side, I'd take after Anakin and get rid of the younglings. Here's how we can use just one boat and completely ruin your server. Since in certain versions of the game, it was possible that if you placed down a boat on a server and then continuously got in and out of it using the sneak key and the right click button, then eventually we could essentially trick the server into thinking that we're still in the boat while our body goes off and astral projects somewhere else. Meaning we could do crazy things like place these ghost blocks and appear like we're levitating to your friends. Or jump off of high cliffs and take no fall damage whatsoever. And then, the best part, if you wanted to instantly teleport back, all you had to do is just press the sneak key and you'd be right there. Minecraft's nether portals will never be the same again, since now it's possible to use an ender pearl to teleport yourself through a nether portal by right-clicking it, which could give you one of the fastest ways to escape if you need to get out of the nether on a pinch. While you might be familiar with the rare chance of breeding 2 red mushrooms together to get a brown mushroom, it is worth noting that breeding together 2 brown mushrooms also has a 0.09765,625% chance to give a red mushroom. Before the so-called flattening, there are ways to give yourself special 6-sided blocks through give commands in Minecraft. And while some of these have been added in official capacity, such as the 6-sided logs or the smooth stone block, I think it'd be great to see something like the 6-sided piston return as an official capacity. Maybe it's a crate block. Or if you want to add in extra redstone functionality, you could use this as a way to extend the piston push limit past 12 blocks. I don't know, I just think it would be cool to see these features that were historic in some Minecraft players' journey return officially, especially if they've already picked a few of them to do this with. Minecraft treats certain hitboxes in weird ways, and that can be best seen when we talk about entity stacking. See, in certain cases, it's possible to rest one entity on top of another, and while I personally use this for letting me use a minecart as a hat, it can also let us crowd surf. Sure enough, if you ride a boat on top of a bed of entities, we can ride it just the same as we would on ice. Granted, it might not be the most popular travel method, but I'd say it's definitely worth a try, at least once for the screenshot. Minecraft's world border is an odd piece of code, and when you fly out 30 million blocks to visit, you'll see as much. But while there's been plenty of attention given to these glitches, I think this is equally strange. See, if you get a spider next to the border wall, then the mobs will start climbing it as they would any other, which which I guess makes some sense, but I'd figure that since we can't place any of our blocks on it, they'd have nothing to grab onto, and it's maybe the only chance they'll ever have it climbing up to build height. So zombie sieges are a rare event that happens in Java Edition. So at midnight, a group of up to 20 zombies can spawn if the player's inside a village. Whoa, okay, hey fellas. These mobs can even spawn inside of mushroom fields biomes if the player yourself is inside of an adjacent biome. So if you're in the ocean nearby, you could cause this to happen inside of the mushroom fields biome. If you're wondering why it takes your mule so long to regenerate, there's a reason for it, although it's a bit odd. See, mules regenerate randomly, not at a fixed rate, which means that every tick that passes, 20 ticks to a second, there's a 1 in 900 chance that they'll restore 1 HP. So if they're not regenerating, you're just getting unlucky. Minecraft has plenty of care put into its animations, but if you blink, you might not always appreciate them. That is, until you use this command. See, in Bedrock, it's actually possible to use the play animation command to apply different animations to the various mob models. Meaning, not only can we make a piglin dance, but we can do the same to ourselves. And the results can get pretty ridiculous. So if you want to take the time to appreciate Minecraft's vast animation library, this might be the perfect tool for your future dance party. So salmon, oddly enough, have this feature as opposed to cod. I didn't know this. They can swim up a 4 to 5 block tall waterfall, simulating real life salmon. There's also different salmon sizes. Squids, unlike ambient mobs, can actually be name tagged and leashed. I can in fact use it in a lot of different ways. And I think part of this is just because of how old they are, that they got grandfathered into a lot of this stuff. I think nowadays if they were added, they wouldn't have a lot of these features to them. The reason there's so many different variants of tropical fish, over 2,000 of them, is actually because of a bug. Black isn't supposed to be one of the different variants that happen, but because of a bug, it now shows up in over 192 different variants, which is a pretty big implementation for a bug. By modifying the texture, we can actually see that this is what a baby gasoline looks like without its outer skin. Horrifying. It's strange to think that the first illagers added in Minecraft weren't the pillagers, but rather the vindicators. Entering in the same update as our llamas, the vindicators were added to help populate the new woodland mansions. But if you leave them unarmed with the commands, then they attack you with both their arms up like a zombie. And while they can't break down doors, it is worth noting that a Johnny Vindicator will attack armor stands but can never break them. And the reason for that is to break an armor stand, you have to hit it twice in quick succession. They just don't attack fast enough. Even though you can't see it, it's not a surprise that the ground underneath this snow layer is made up of grass blocks, and you can break it to see as much. But while that grass might look normal when we place a torch, when it's underneath the snow, it's something entirely different. And through the help of an enderman, we can see that texture for ourselves. See, if an enderman were to pick up one of these snowy grass blocks, they ditch the snow and just be left with a strange silver turf instead. And while it doesn't offer much functionality outside of being a grass block, it is still a cool souvenir. Seeing through walls would be a superpower that most of us would love to have. But Steve isn't exactly Superman, so the idea is a pipe dream. Or it would be if we stayed at this FOV. See, the way that field division works in Minecraft, if you drink a speed 2 potion and then turn your slider up to Quake Pro, then you can get some really wide vision. And then all it takes is lining yourself up next to a wall and the job is done. So if you suspect that your friend might be hiding things around your base, this might be the perfect shot to find it. And it'll make Green's job of hiding his even tougher to do. Beta 1.9 also brought us the mushrooms, which while in Minecraft are distinctly passive, in dungeons they're oddly enough hostile mobs, actually having tankier stats than another hostile mob like a zombie. If you were to take a tadpole, feed an entire stack of slime balls before bucketing them up, you can release them in the nether and have them safely grow up into the warm variant of the frog, helping you get the achievement and the better frog lights. This jump might look impossible, and frankly it should be, but with the help of something called blip jumping, you're able to learn how to jump more than 2 blocks vertically. Since when you align yourself to a specific pixel in a chest or an ender chest, and then start jamming down your space button, you can use a specific setup to learn how to jump much higher than normal. And honestly, I'd want to learn how to do this skill just so I can get out of dodge from this ugly setup. I mean, an orange carpet, sandstone, and an ender chest, I mean, it's definitely a look, but it's not a look for me. Alright, so sheared sheep actually do not need grass blocks. I had no idea about this, but they can actually just eat the short grass item or the tall grass block in the world. So we should eventually see this. It's only mud in the pen, except for a bit of short grass. Granted, it's not going to regrow, so it's still not the best thing to use for them, but I didn't know that they could actually just eat these. Oh, here we go. We can see it eating. As of 1.16, the current longest name for a block is polished blackstone pressure plate, which is actually tied for cracked polished blackstone bricks, both of which being 34 characters long with spaces and 31 without. But of course, this is excluding the education edition, because there it's not a fair competition. Did you know you can kill the ender dragon with just 1 end crystal? It's crazy, but follow this out. Since back in 1.17, if you booted up a super flat world, and if you brought an end crystal to the end with you as you went through the portal, and then placed down that same crystal on the obsidian platform that you spawn in, it would just kill the ender dragon instantly. Which is weird, Weird, I thought those crystals were used for bringing it back to life. But nope, on a super flat world, I guess it just makes it super flatline. Every now and then, it seems Mojang has fun coding in certain loot tables. And while some of those are dark, such as the turtles turning into bowls with lightning, others like this are just clever. As we know, if you kill a zombie, it has a rare chance of dropping a potato, which is handy, but you might want to be careful to not use a fire aspect sword here, because if you do and a potato drops, it'll be baked instead, and that'll delay your farming dreams. So while it does offer a better snack, it might not be best for your long-term return. On July 29th of 2015, the shulker was added to Minecraft, and because it works as a living block, you might be surprised to know that if you were to put one of these inside of a minecart, you can actually still walk on top of it like a regular block, giving us basically a moving platform. And while some of you might know that the shulker's bullet that it shoots out is called the spark, stranger still is that the game's files originally called the shulker the ender golem in its texture file, which kinda makes this the first fully hostile golem. Under the surface, Minecraft has plenty of hidden features that I don't think anyone would find naturally. Like, case in point, let's say you're raiding a woodland mansion, and for some reason, you brought along your trusty blue sheep. But to your surprise, just as you start to fight the evoker, he turns on the very thing you love and makes your blue sheep into a red sheep. Now, that's weird in its own right, but I think it's even funnier that the game rule mob griefing actually can prevent this from happening. Because really, when it comes to mobs damaging your stuff, this is what we're all worried about. Nothing else comes close. So, snow golems are actually completely immune to fall damage. In that way, they're like iron golems as well, but it doesn't matter what height you drop them from, they're always safe, which makes sense, right? I mean, powdered snow removes your fall damage, so why else wouldn't snow do that? Minecraft redstone is a beautiful thing, but it's not always the most intuitive, and a key instance of that would be this example's so-called leaf stone. Now, that might sound silly, but it's actually true that leaves are capable of transferring block updates. See, since these leaves have a tag that updates whenever a log is nearby, we can use an observer to detect that signal, and in that way, we can send quick updates just by moving a log with a piston, which seems crazy, but I know there's pros out there who can think of plenty of practical uses for it. Would you believe me if I told you that striders were fish? Well, looking at one now, that's a hard comparison to justify, though that might have changed during development. See, if we check the strider's texture file prior to snapshot 20W15A, they actually had a fin in the texture data, but since that update, the original file has been removed. Nowadays, we all know this guy is Steve, and while that's an iconic enough name to get him into Smash Bros, it turns out the player didn't always have that moniker. In fact, it wasn't until his first guest appearance in the indie game Super Meat Boy that he was finally called Steve, and by all accounts prior, he was just a nameless figure. If you're 1 to 2 blocks away from a breeze, it'll not choose to attack you. So, this is a good way to go and attack those breezes, is if you just go chase up next to it, you'll be completely fine. With just a lever and some redstone dust, we're able to lag the game so much that we can basically freeze time. Since with the way that Mojang's coded redstone dust, it gets pretty laggy when you connect a bunch of these up to a lever. And then by using something like the fast right-click feature in a mod like Tweakaroo, we can flip that same lever on and off until eventually the redstone's updating so much that we basically slow time down to a crawl. And then, that's where the fun begins. Since one of the easiest tricks to pull off with this is to break bedrock. Or if you wanted to, you could use this to freeze time on a multiplayer server, build an entire structure, and then, when time switches back to normal, your friend will have no idea where that came from. But let me warn that in that case, you don't want to span the lever for too long, since doing it for longer than 60 seconds might just trigger Minecraft's watchdog to terminate the server. But as long as you freeze time in smaller increments, they'll be none the wiser. On October 24th of 2009, we got the spiders added in Minecraft. And then later on during beta, spiders actually had a unique ability where they were able to see the player through blocks. But while this was added during the beta phase, it was removed in 1.8. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?